Have you ever put some oil in a pan, watch it smoke, add your food in anyways, and immediately ruin whatever you added to the pan? Or if you've ever walked down the aisle of a grocery store and seen rows and rows of oil and just thought, what do you even need all of this for? Well, this video is for you. I'm breaking down cooking oils in this video so that you can confidently stock your kitchen and start cooking with ease. Hi, I'm Awosa, food lover and ambitious home cook, and I've spent the last 4 years really trying to hone my skills with this cooking thing, and I've picked up so much knowledge that at this point, I just need to share it. Before you know what kind of oils you need in your kitchen, you need to understand its purpose and all it can do. Oil has 3 primary uses in a kitchen: as a main ingredient, as a cooking vessel, and as a form of seasoning. As a main ingredient, oil can be used to impart flavor and also to achieve a certain texture. Think when you add olive oil to a salad dressing that you're making and it gives it this nice grassy flavor and also gives you that luscious mouthfeel. As a cooking medium, oil can be heated to higher temperatures, which allows for the surface area of the food that you cook in it to climb as well. This is how you achieve browning or a crisp sear or even softening veggies. Think cooking eggs in butter or sauteing veggies in olive oil, searing a steak in clarified butter, things like that. To be used as a seasoning, oil should be added in at the end of cooking. Here, you're using it to adjust flavor or enrich a dish. Think olive oil swirled into a bowl of soup, a pat of butter on a baked potato, or even adding sesame oil to rice that you're making for that boost of flavor. So how do you know what role oil is playing in the dish? If it's making something creamy or making something light or making something flaky, then it's playing the role as a main ingredient. If it makes something crisp, then it's playing the role as a cooking medium. One distinction though, oil can also be used to make something soften, like the veggies that I mentioned earlier, softening them in some olive oil. If oil is playing a flavor role and it's added in at the start, then it's a main ingredient. But if you add it at the end, then it's a seasoning. So the oil that you choose will depend on 2 things. What flavor do you want and what temperature are you trying to cook this thing to? Since we're talking about temperature, then we have to talk about the smoke point of oils. Put simply, the smoke point is how far you can heat an oil before it starts to degrade or break down. Other foods will blacken or burn, but oil will start to smoke, and that's how you know it's hit its smoke point. Different oils have different smoke points, which is another reason, aside from flavor, that people will have multiple oils in their kitchen, as you can see. I'm gonna link a video that goes more into depth, but that's basically what you need to know about the smoke point of oil. Now, I could go through every oil and all their uses and everything that they do, but instead, I've decided to empty out my fridge and empty out my pantry and go through the oils that I have in my house so that you can practically see how everything is used. Starting with olive oil, this is what we mainly use back at home, and so whenever I started doing my own cooking, I picked up olive oil as well. That's because it's heart healthy, so people usually use it for health benefits. But aside from that, olive oil also has different flavor profiles, which is why I have a variety of them for myself. I know some of them are kind of empty, but I've kept the bottles just so that I could show you and illustrate my point. A more neutral oil is great for general cooking, but then I'll also need a more robust oil if I need it as a flavoring agent. So I have this one here, and I also have this bottle that my sister bought me back from either Italy or Spain. One thing to note about oil is that it's not like wine. It doesn't get better with age. You don't want to save it for a special occasion and use it for that. No, you actually want to use it up as quick as you can or within reason, because it will degrade over time and it doesn't get better with age. I also have this Texas Gold garlic infused olive oil that I picked up at a farmer's market just to see what it was like. One note about flavored olive oils is that sometimes they're usually just masking an olive oil that's not very high quality. I can't lie, I didn't love this. I probably wouldn't purchase it again, but it really wasn't terrible. I just wanted to point that out for you guys. There are so many different olive oils in the store to choose from, but from my research and everything that I did, the California Olive Ranch is something that is typically recommended by a lot of home cooks and professional chefs, so that's what I reach for and what I purchase. But I'll also link another video down below for you guys. Binging with Babish went and rated all the different olive oils. See, he has a budget that I'm not working with. I'm not going to the grocery store to test out every single olive oil, so I'm pretty fine just using what's mostly recommended, and so this is what I would recommend to you. Because don't worry guys, I did my research. Next, we have good old butter. I will always have butter with me at home. You just never know when it will come in handy. I have my normal butter that I would use for, spreading on toast, but I also always keep unsalted butter on hand because what if I need to baste a steak or do some baking? This is where unsalted butter comes in. Unsalted is also typically recommended because you don't really know how much salt the makers of these butters are putting in. So if you want to control your intake or control the flavor by yourself, buy unsalted and then add in the butter yourself. Add in the salt yourself. Like I said, butter is great for so many different parts of cooking. You can use it for baking or to just add richness into a dish. If you heat butter gently and then allow the milk solids to caramelize, it creates one of my favorite flavors, which is brown butter. Now, one thing to note with butter is that you're not to use it for high heat cooking. It has a very low smoke point. If you want to use that butter flavor for high heat cooking, you're going to need to do a process called clarifying the butter, which will separate the milk solids, which is what will typically burn, and then leave you with the oil. Now, if you take that clarified butter and you heat it even more, and then you have ghee, which I also have here at home. Now, ghee, I guess, is also a form of clarified butter, but it's been taken further and it has almost kind of a nutty taste, similar to brown butter, like I was saying that I love. I've only just picked this up recently to play around with it just because I love that flavor so much. Different countries have different oils that they will use in their traditional cooking, and that's typically informed by maybe the plants that they have or the animals that they have access to. Ghee specifically originated in India. And since we're on the topic of different countries having different oils that they play around with in their cooking, I have to talk about palm oil. And now, as a West African, Nigerian specifically, this is pretty much a non-negotiable in my kitchen. I know, there has been so much talk about how bad palm oil is for you and all this demonization of the oil. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really care. As for me in my house, I will keep palm oil in my cupboards. Now, I use unrefined palm oil, and I think the refined palm oil is what they're typically going on and on about, but this has such an unreplaceable, unmistakable flavor. I use palm oil as a seasoning. Sometimes I'll add it I'll add it as a flavoring ingredient if I've made like pepper soup and I just want to swirl it at the end. I'll use it as a main ingredient in my cooking if I'm using it at the start of the cooking for its, I don't even know how to describe this taste, but it's just delicious. I use it on its own and I'll put a little bit of salt and dip like yam in it. It's just delicious. And I know there's a lot of talk about how bad this is for you. I don't really pay that any mind. It's also something that, like, if you use in moderation like anything else, it probably should be fine. But I can't lie, I focus more on flavor and taste when I'm cooking than I do on like health. So if that's what you're looking for, I probably wouldn't listen to me. Maybe do some other research. But if we're talking flavor, I got you. This is delicious. And since we're talking about seed and nut oils like palm oil, coconut oil. I specifically use unrefined coconut oil, and that's because generally if I'm reaching for coconut oil, it's because I want the flavor of it, and so that's why you use unrefined. I believe that you can also purchase refined coconut oil, which doesn't have that same coconutty taste, but that's not something that I've owned or something that I've played with. Compared to most of the oils here, aside from the palm oil, coconut oil is also solid at room temperature, which is kind of different for a seed and nut oil. So people will also use this for baking. I think vegans and stuff will use this a lot. You can use it to make pastries and things like that. I personally haven't played around with it. Usually if I'm using coconut oil, then I might be making like a fried rice or just something where that tropically coconut flavor would be good for. Again, like the palm oil, I purchase unrefined for the best flavor and taste. If you're picking up some tips and tricks that you haven't heard before, please give this video a like so that it can spread a little bit more and other people can pick up this knowledge. Now, you don't always want your oils to play a flavoring role in your cooking, and pretty much everything that I've talked about here today has some type of flavor. And so for that, I will reach for personally grapeseed oil, but this is typically where vegetable oils like peanut oil, canola oil, which is also kind of demonized, and some other high heat oils will come into play. I specifically use grapeseed oil again because I've done my research about what is better or not, and grapeseed oil is typically recommended. A lot of people don't like vegetable oils for like high heat cooking because they think that the flavor kind of like changes and it tastes a little bit fishy. I like grapeseed oil for my high heat cooking, and this is what I would recommend. So I'll use this if I want to sear a steak on high, or sometimes you need an oil in your baking that is a neutral flavor. Grapeseed oil would be something good for that. So an example of using this in high heat cooking, I can use this to sear a steak and then I'll finish with butter for flavor. But this would be good so it doesn't burn. Remember when I was talking about adding oil to a pan immediately, whatever you use is ruined? If I'm using something like a steak and I try to sear it in butter, that's exactly what would happen. I would ruin that steak. But you can use something like a neutral oil with a high smoke point like grapeseed oil and then finish with butter for flavor. Now, another oil that I have in my kitchen that I like to play around with is duck fat. And duck fat is having a moment. Actually, animal fats in general are having a moment. There's different types of animal fats. I have duck fat in my house right now, but different animals obviously have their own different fats. You have beef tallow, which is the oil from a beef, which is the oil from a cow, not a beef. And sometimes if I'm breaking down a chicken, I will cut off the fat and then I'll render that out in my oven so that I have chicken fat. So like I said, animal fats are really having a moment these days. I'm not that tapped into all the intricacies of social media and what's going on there, but what I can tell you is that duck fat is delicious. Yes, duck fat is pretty pricey, but if you're doing something like a confit, which is what I purchased this for some duck confit, you can actually make up some of the difference with a more neutral flavored oil. And when you're done making your confit or whatever you use the duck fat to begin with, you can also strain it out and use it again. I'll use this for savory cooking, but I've also seen people use it for baking. The thing about animal fat is that it's pretty much the flavor of the animal, but like intensified. A lot of the flavor molecules in an animal actually live inside the animal fat. So if you're trying to like bump up the flavor of something, using an animal fat is a great idea. For example, back to the chicken fat that I was talking about rendering out. For my Thanksgiving gravy, I did not make my own stock from scratch. That's not really something that I do, honestly. But I did purchase a really good bone broth at the supermarket. So to fortify the flavor of the chicken in the gravy that I was making and to make sure that it really had that nice homemade feel, I ended up making some of the roux by using half butter and using the chicken fat that I had rendered so that I could really, really intensify that chicken flavor. Side note, I used to think that raw chicken as a kid was just absolutely disgusting. I didn't really want to touch it. And now these days I'm overall in there reaching into the different carcass and cutting the fat and this, that. All of that to say that like you really do get better at cooking, growth. We all start from somewhere. So don't be worried about, how fussy you are in the kitchen right now. You can get better. That's why I'm here, just to share you guys what I'm doing so that we can all learn together. Last but not least, I have sesame oil, and I pretty much only use this when I am making Asian cuisine that calls for it. I haven't played around with it in any other way, but I'm sure that there are. This is so strong. You typically only need a drop or two, so a little goes a long way. And I'll store mine in the fridge because sesame oil can go rancid or it'll go bad pretty fast and you need to store it properly. I'll store mine in the fridge just because like I'm not gonna use it that much, but it does go bad pretty fast, so keep an eye out on that. I'm curious, what oils do you have in your kitchen? Leave a comment down below. I want to know like what is not the holy grail, but what is the oil that everyone around you has or everyone in your region, wherever you're from, are typically cooking with? Are you like me and palm oil is like from your region? Is it ghee? I'm really curious. Now that I've walked you through all the oils that I have in my own home kitchen, I hope that you're feeling a little bit more confident when you're approaching the grocery store aisle that has all the oils. I know that oil and fat gets a huge bad rap and you're not supposed to like use that much of it, but honestly, oil has so much flavor, fat has so much flavor, and it really does play a big role in cooking. I know that one of the things that they say about like restaurant cooking is that part of the reason why it tastes so delicious is the amount of oil and fat that they're willing to use. So don't be scared when you're in your home kitchen. Obviously, within reason, don't go crazy, but sometimes you might need to use a little bit more oil than you think you are. Thank you for hanging out with me and going through my kitchen as I talked on and on and on about oils. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to stick around and watch another one because I am dropping tips and tips and tips, and I'm going to continue to drop tips and tips and tips. I will see you guys in the next one.